This is Giants Amongst Us.
Now, here's a little story I got to tell.
How is everybody doing? Hopefully you're all in good spirits, hopefully staying safe, sane, and in good health. Welcome to the show, where you're only going to hear real stories that are told by real people. Today, we're joined by Pamela, and she's got a story to tell. Talk about going to school as a child on an empty stomach because you haven't eaten God knows when. Or still having to go to school with clothes that don't fit, shoes that are too tight because the money isn't there, or you've been neglected. Bouncing from place to place, living inside of a household where things aren't stable and the foundation is shaky. The abuse, neglect that one can go through. Pamela today shares some of those experiences with us and how that affected her life as a child and leading into her adult years. The toxic relationships, the depression, being suicidal, feeling trapped in a career field that to her was soul crushing. Her story involves pain, suffering, trauma, abuse, but it doesn't end there. And that's what this podcast is about. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this is Pamela and her story. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We are back. We have another one today. We have another guest, and I'd like to welcome Pamela to the show. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day. You could have been doing anything, could have been anywhere, but you took some time out of the day to sit down and have a talk with us. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here, actually. So thank you.
And it was a fine thing that we were able to work it out this time around. Work out the kinks.
Yeah.
Second time
We
is
had
a
a little
charm.
technical difficulty,
We did.
but yeah, we got it together.
We did. So I always like to before we get too far ahead of things, I like to just get a little backstory about the guests that I have on. So if you mind just talking a little bit about where you come from and how it was for you growing up, Pamela.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Pamela Topchian, and I now am in Northern California and of the U.S. And I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in Illinois. Um, but I grew up in poverty, and my parents divorced when I was young, and there was no such thing as any laws for deadbeat dads or anything. So my dad didn't help out at all, and I had two sisters. So it was really rough on my mom. So we ended up moving a lot, and we were hungry a lot. We were evicted sometimes, and ended up living in some pretty sketchy neighborhoods. Then, after that and growing up, I had went through some neglect, some trauma experiences, and ended up having two abusive marriages. I am a former nurse, now certified hypnotherapist. Over 2020 is when I made that big switch from nursing to certified hypnotherapy. And I wrote a book about it all. So my whole story of the childhood of trauma and the two abusive marriages and my adulthood of trauma, and then getting out of it finally in my 50s, get healing and getting out of that and writing all about it. That was a big part of my healing as well, was writing that book. But yeah, so now I'm certified hypnotherapist. I was able to switch out of nursing. I also do pet sitting on the side, which I love, and we had a nice little discussion about. And and then writing another book as well now. This one has been published for about a year and a half, and I'm writing another one just on the nursing career.
Are you going to get into like all of the nitty gritty of the nursing behind the scenes, or what is that going to?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's probably just one or two chapters in my memoir about nursing, and I had a few people say, they would be interested in more information about that. Um,
I
and
bet.
I feel like there's not necessarily secrets, but there's a lot of sort of things that people don't really know.
It's like the code of silence, isn't it? In a way,
Right.
isn't it? Like, like they have a, like, they say in the police force,
Right.
there's that, I don't know what they call it, where sometimes they want to keep it in house, even with the military. And also, I think in the medical field, it's
Right.
like, keep it in house. We don't want this bad press on
Right,
us.
because I think, it's kind of a noble career, and a lot of people think of nursing and or doctors or anybody in the medical field as, you know, a lot of respect is there, and a lot of people really look up to those people or think that, it's something that would be a great job to have. But and for some people it really is. But for me, I found it to be very, I say it was soul sucking for me, and it really was. So, yeah, so that's going to be a lot of the inside scoop, I guess is a better word than secrets, sort of the
Hmm.
inside scoop. But
Yeah.
I do make sure that I say that this is my own experience from my own perspective, and it doesn't mean that this is every nurse's story.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I know from just stories that I've heard, because my wife, she was a nurse for 20 something years in the ICU unit. And so she has also a lot of
Oh,
stories about, and it's just, but I'm not
yes.
going to knock people that get in there for the right reasons, because I think that you have to be a certain kind of breed to get
Right.
involved in that, because it's like you're going to battle every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've been there, you've done that, and you felt it on your skin.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll break you physically and mentally and in your soul. I mean, and I'm sure your wife would agree to that.
Like, how did you put it? It was
Soul
so
sucking.
so sucking.
Soul
Wow,
crushing.
that's a.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me going back a little
Yeah.
bit, did you say your father, or
Hmm.
your father, was he completely out of the picture from day one, or
So at 9 years old, my parents divorced. So it was
okay,
before 9 years old, they were together. They were always fighting. I didn't see him too much, even when they were together or when we all lived together. I was, so I have two older sisters. I was born in the mid 60s, and I was supposed to be the baby that saved the marriage. And, that never works out. But back in those days, it was a little bit harder to be a single mom, and it was a little bit harder to divorce. And so they tried to keep it together for the kids, and they didn't do a very good job of that. So, yeah, so after my parents divorced, my dad was out of the picture after that. So I was 9 years old, and then we moved away because the house was in disrepair, and I'm sure that my mom just wanted to get away from the house that needed a lot of work anyway. And rather than, a lot of times when you have a mother with little children, it's the father that leaves. But she didn't want anything to do with that house. She knew it would be a big burden. So they had went to court and did the whole regular divorce thing, and he was supposed to pay child support and supposed to probably alimony, I imagine. I don't even know.
yeah,
But and he was supposed to actually sell the house and give her half of what came out of that. He didn't sell the house, and he never paid her any money. And so my mom had these three girls, and this was, the 70s now,
hmm,
and she didn't have a college education. And so she was trying to keep a roof over our head, which sometimes didn't work. And my father didn't get involved in our lives until I had my eldest sister was killed in a car accident just before she was 18. And that was just before, or she was 18, and it was just a couple days before my 14th birthday. So that was one of the
mm,
big things that happened. One of the major traumas in my life is losing a sibling like that. And And then it was after that kind of that my dad kind of got a little bit more involved in our lives, but still not very much. Mostly not until grandchildren came in the picture did he get involved.
How was life like during your school years? Were you able to stay in one school, or were you kind of bouncing around?
Yeah, we were moving around a lot. I was always switching schools, and there was a lot of missed time in school. And I even during high school, I had some date rapes. I didn't have any supervision. I didn't have any, sort of anybody teaching me anything or showing me anything or, you know, um,
Yeah,
and so
kind of learning it as you go,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. And my older sisters were just like not even around. They were off doing their own thing. And in fact, my sister, just a few years ago, the one that's still alive, and she's 4 years older than me. So she had said to me not too long ago, "Did mom farm you out for a little bit? Were you fostered out for a little bit?" She thought that I wasn't even there because she didn't remember me being around. And I was never, I was there. I was there. And I was just left alone, for most of my childhood after 9 years old. Yeah. So I was very scared. I was very, hungry. I even hid a lot just because I was scared. Um, yeah, we switched around schools. I didn't have like new school clothes, and my shoes were so tight all the time in my childhood that at 16 I had bunion surgery um, on my feet because they were so bad from wearing shoes that were so tight my whole childhood.
Golly,
Yeah.
that is like going through all of that at such a young age, and then just a lot of the abuse and the trauma. I mean, that is something that's going to take a toll on. Like you said, you had two marriages, and those they didn't end in the best of terms. But did you also bring a lot of that into the marriages and
Yeah. So I feel like, when somebody is vulnerable and somebody has, I didn't know myself at all. Only, I would say only in the last 10 years or even the last 6, 7 years did I really start to begin to know myself. Um, and I had gotten some therapy at that time. So I really want to, suggest that. I really want to let people know that I didn't just,
hmm
write out my story and I was healed. There was a lot of time in between there. But yeah, I really feel that when people are vulnerable, they attract the kind of people that are going to be controlling. They attract these people to them that aren't going to be healthy for them. Just because you don't have the boundaries, you don't have the personal boundaries, the things that make you stand up for yourself, and the confidence and the self-respect. You don't have any of that. So you attract the kind of people that are going to take advantage of that. So I do feel like, I attracted those relationships and I didn't see red flags, or if I did, I didn't know what to do about them.
hmm
If I saw that things weren't so great, I didn't know how to stand up for myself or how to navigate through a toxic marriage or relationship even. I do believe that it all happens for a reason, and that's part of when I did go for therapy and when I started writing the book. I didn't start writing it to be a published book. I started writing it to kind of lay it all out there, for myself to kind of connect those dots. And it was really, really eye opening to see, from the childhood, and, you go through the whole life with me in
hmm
the book, and you can see where it's like, well, of course, this happened, and of course that happened. But as you're going through it, it doesn't make sense. You just feel like it's one trauma after the other, one traumatic experience after the other, and you don't realize that everything leading up to everything else,
yeah.
it makes sense once you put it all out there.
So in the beginning, was it more of a journal? Like you were writing, kind of tracking your years. throughout time and
Yeah, I wanted to see, I wanted to remember it all, and I just wanted to put it all down, kind of like a journal. Yeah. But I also, I had had a major, after the second divorce, I had a major breakdown and I was suicidal at that time. And part of writing it all out was to kind of get it out there for like my kids, or, if the suicidal thoughts won, then I would have like a record of it all
mm,
for anyone to say, oh, this is what happened in her life. And especially, like I said, like my kids who are adults now, and were adults when I wrote the book, just to kind of like have a record of it all, so that if anybody wondered, because I wasn't really vocal about it. I talk on podcasts, I have the book, and I'm real open about it now, about my whole childhood and my whole life.
hmm
But my young adult years, my teenage years, I never spoke about it. I never talked about my feelings or what was happening in my life. And I tried to appear as normal, quote unquote, normal as possible. It wasn't necessarily trying to be like fake or to put on something that wasn't there. It was more just trying to blend in, kind of, not to cause anybody, not to cause attention to myself, so people would say, what's the matter with you, or what happened to you, or I didn't want to cause anybody any stress or worry about me. So I was just trying to be like everybody else, when I didn't really know what that was. Like, I didn't know what a normal childhood was. And
yeah. Was that with the whole writing process of it? Was that something that you feel that was helping you along the way? I don't know if you had seek therapy during that time, or you were first you started writing your emotions, your feelings, and your experiences, and then you seek therapy later on. Like how did that kind of play out?
throughout my life, I kind of kept journals and diaries off and on. I would for a while, and then I wouldn't. But once I started therapy, that's when I started writing it all out. Because the therapist said to me, she used the word neglect for my childhood. And I was kind of shocked when she said that, because we think of neglect as parents who are abusive, and or they're alcoholics, or they're doing drugs around the children, or they're
Mhm.
just not capable of caring for their children well. And I think of, we always think of neglect as like a form of abuse, which it is, but we think of it as like willful neglect. But I was neglected in the way of, there just wasn't time and money. So so I
Yeah.
never thought of myself as being neglected. But as soon as she said that, the therapist, then it kind of hit home how traumatic my childhood really was. And then, some of the things, like I said, I had some sexual assault and date rapes, things like that, that probably wouldn't have happened if I had some adult supervision, and being advised by adults, just how to navigate through life, and having some sort of rules about when to be home or stuff like that. So,
Yeah. No, I was just thinking that like brought to mind how there's some people that they could have been through so much in their life, and they have a lot of things that have happened to them, a lot of not the best of things, but when it's when it's spoken of, they kind of, I'm not saying that this is you in your case, but some they tend to downplay it. Like it's like, no, it wasn't really that bad. It was, and it's almost as if it's not normalized, but it's just something that they just grew accustomed to and they didn't see it in any other way. So it kind of, unless they're maybe put in another situation where things are a bit different and they're like, oh, wow,
yeah.
so this is how it also can be. I mean, but sometimes when you're a child, especially, and that's all you know and that's what you know, it's kind of like what you expect the other people
Yeah.
to be going through.
Yeah, when I went for therapy, so I had had this major breakdown, and I had had an abusive ex husband, and I was feeling like, why can't I get over this? Because I started getting real depressed, started being anxious, having night terrors and panic attacks. And I thought,
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong with me, that I couldn't get over that. And I thought, so I was beat up, and I had to call the police to get out of there alive when I left my second husband. I thought that that was the event that put me into that tailspin, of anxiety and depression. I didn't realize that it was everything leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she had mentioned, and when I went to therapy, I thought it was because of that. And like, I'm just really anxious. I'm just really depressed. I'm having trouble getting out of it. And it was because of this time I was beat up by that ex-husband. And I thought it was just that one incident. So then when she started,
Oh, never mind everything else.
right, everything led up to that,
Wow.
and I just crashed. It was like my system couldn't handle anything else. And plus, that was like the first time that I didn't have anybody else that I was responsible for. The kids were grown, this husband was now gone, and it was just me left to myself, and I crashed. When
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would soar, I thought, yay, this is great. Now I'm on my own. Everything will be awesome now. But it went the other way. And so I was just really confused.
How long were you
So
married?
the second marriage, I was married for eight years, the second one.
But was it always abusive? That of course usually it starts off fine and dandy, but then for whatever reason in turn of events, sometimes things start
Right.
spinning a little downward. And he actually put hands on you also.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end. So he wasn't like that through the whole marriage, but at the end he was. But he was also, he was an alcoholic,
Mm.
and he was also a drug addict, which I didn't really realize until the very end. And that was kind of the thing that made me say, I had already said that I'm divorcing. I can't, I am working harder at your wellness than you are, because he was an alcoholic. And then he would have these terrible breakdowns and go into mental health facilities, and he'd stay there, and he'd come back with medicine, and he would end up taking them like excessively, and he was not himself at all. He was just really just totally a different person. And I didn't know that he was doing that with the medication, and I didn't know that he was still drinking. And I would come home from a 12-hour shift or even a 16-hour shift,
Oh my
and
goodness.
he would be just not a normal person. I mean, he would be acting like some of my Alzheimer's patients. And I really was worried that he was having early onset Alzheimer's, or I
Hmm.
thought he was having late onset schizophrenia, something really, serious like that. I didn't realize he was doing that to himself. And when he went into one of the facilities and he was going to be able to stay longer, I had to go into his closet and get some clothes and stuff like that. And when I did, I found alcohol. And then I started looking around. Somebody tipped me off that it was the wife of somebody that he worked with, that I was friends with, actually. And she said, look around some more. If you found something, look around some more, because chances are it's hidden throughout the house.
Yeah.
And she's quite a bit older than me, and so she knew better knew
Hmm.
better than I did about that stuff. So I did, and there were little bottles of alcohol all over, and his medications that were discontinued, he still had them hidden places and everything. So that's when I knew that he was self-sabotaging and putting me through all this grief of trying to figure out what's wrong with my husband,
Hmm.
and what can we do. And I was worried for his safety. And I would go to these facilities to visit him, and I'd sit in the car and cry and just sob, not knowing what to do. Besides being overtired and overstressed from work, I had this going on at home. So once I found that out, I told him I was divorcing, but I was going to wait until this is the big mistake. So I was going to wait until
Hmm.
he could get himself back on his feet so he wouldn't be homeless and he could take care of himself. And then I just kind of ignored him. We kind of lived separately in the house. And it was just a few days after I told him I was divorcing that he just physically attacked me. And I say he was a monster because like his eyes were not himself.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was on. Obviously, he was, on something, and came home from work and he just was in a rampage. That was the last day. And then I called the police to leave. So he was getting worse and worse throughout. So probably the first couple of years were pretty good. He had trouble with work, and we kept moving. And that's kind of like there's some red flags there that I kind of ignored. And I thought, well, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It just kept getting worse. And then he kept drinking more and more. And then these medications came into play. And when I went to divorce him, I found out that he had been married 5 times before me. And I didn't know that at the time. Yeah. So he was like lying the whole time.
Yeah. A lot of skeletons in the closet.
Right, right. Yeah.
Man, well, at least I mean, as much as you said you were battered and beaten physically, emotionally, spiritually, at least when he did put his hands on you, pretty well, you said it was already to the point where you were going to get a divorce, but that was it. That was the last straw. That there was
Right.
no, let's see if I could still keep the door a little bit open and maybe there's some change or something. I mean, it seems like you had enough and for good reasons.
Yeah. I felt I was about ready to break myself. I knew I was on that edge of a breakdown myself. That was that breaking point. I have to take care of myself. He's not taking care of himself. And not only is he working against himself, but now he's working against me. And I had always said, because he would get up in my face and yell at me and maybe a little shove here or there or something. But
Hmm.
I had always said when he started getting abusive, if he ever lays his hands on me, if he ever physically beats me up, that will be the last thing. And I've said that, like to myself. I don't think I said it to anybody because I don't know that I had told anybody that he was doing this. But I knew when he was doing this, I thought it was like the mental illness or the alcohol or
Hmm.
something. But once I found out there were drugs involved, that was that. But then, yeah, I had always told myself that has to be your breaking point. That has to be the point that you leave no matter what, is if he puts his hands on me. And he did. And that was that. So, yeah.
During that time, were you already speaking with therapists, or that came along later on once you tried to decide, or once you've told yourself, I need to start looking out for myself a bit and start some healing or working on me.
Well, when I had left, I thought that that was going to be it. I didn't really think about therapy at that time. I really thought that that was going to be
Just
it.
kind of break
Yeah.
free.
And I thought I was going to just, everything was going to be great. Yeah. Yeah. Because I had a restraining order. I moved to a place that he didn't know where I was living. And I switched jobs even because that was the only place that he knew where I was. Like he knew where I worked and he didn't know where I lived. And I was scared. I was fearful at work because I
Yeah,
knew he knew
yeah.
where I lived, or knew where I worked. So I switched jobs. I was living somewhere he didn't know. And I thought, this will be great. Everything will be wonderful now. But that's when I crashed. That's when I crashed myself. And I didn't really understand it because I thought the opposite would happen, but I didn't realize at that point, as we said, that everything leading up to that, was
Yeah.
the final crash. So that was in Missouri, and I didn't seek a therapist. So I did try to get some counseling actually, or when I was suicidal, I knew that I had to get some help. That was kind of my sign of like when I started thinking of suicide, I was thinking, oh, I know that I need to get some help. And I tried in Missouri and I didn't have any luck. And I was just in such a bad state of mind and even physical state. I was barely able to take care of myself. I had switched jobs a couple times because I wasn't able to keep any jobs. I was having panic attacks. I was having even physical symptoms and calling off a lot. And I had another friend that was kind of going through a similar thing. And they had somebody in California that said, why don't you come stay with me until you get back on your feet? Maybe that'll be the big change that you need to help. And so they said to me, hey, why don't you do the same thing? And I was like, well, I don't know. I didn't know how I could do that or never thought about it. So then I told my landlord, I said, I may be moving out of state. I just wanted to give you a heads up and see what I needed to do because, I was going to be breaking the lease, of course. And they said, oh, well, we were going to sell the place anyway. So can you be out in 2 weeks?
Oh,
And I know. So, like,
thank you for the
bam.
heads up. Yeah, had you not said anything, that would have just with the day before. You know what? We're gonna sell this place.
Right. And it was a little house and it was so cute. And I loved the little house, but it wasn't in an apartment and it was just, it was really cute. It was just a family that like owned another little house. It wasn't like a rental
Mm-hmm.
company or something. So anyway, so they said, do you, can you be out in 2 weeks? And I said, I'll try. And, and I did. So I was able to I knew that when you switch states with nursing, you have to go through a whole protocol to change your license over to the other state. It's not like you can just go start working somewhere else as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So
Don't you have to go through the board again, a California board
you
or
do. You have
something
to
like
go through the
that?
state board every time you move states, whatever state you're going to. So, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue nursing. Obviously, I was in such a terrible way. So I had made some phone calls and looked online and was able to get a couple things lined up as far as live-in caretaker type of jobs, like pet sitting, house sitting, jobs where they had offices within these big homes and stuff, and you'd go in and you'd do the work while you live there. So it was like a live-in work situation. So I was able to do that, and I got on a bus and made a 3-day ride to California. So when I got there, though,
Whoa, you really packed up and started anew, like started from scratch all over again.
I did. I did. I sold just or got rid of just about everything I had, which I had already left behind a lot when I left my second husband there. When I left, I never went back. So I filled up my Jeep. I had a Jeep. I filled it up with what I could of my stuff, and that's when I moved, and I didn't go back there. So then when I moved this time, which was about a year later, so I was in that little house alone about a year later. Then I moved to California, and so yeah, then I just came with a couple bags, a couple suitcases, and a couple bags.
It was like, I'm going to the land of milk and honey. Let's see how it works out over here. But that's taking courage in itself right there. That's taking a lot of go-getting attitude or just like, let's go see if I can make it happen. That's taking a step into the unknown pretty much.
It was like my last hope. It was my last ditch effort. I was already suicidal. I felt like I had nothing to lose.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought this is my last hope to just make this huge leap of faith. One of the things that saved me from suicide is that my sister, had died when she was 18, and I didn't want to put my mother through that. She had already lost a child.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to lose another one. So that's really what saved me.
When you were suicidal, was this something that during that period in your life, was it something that was like you couldn't get away from it? Was there constant thoughts about it?
Yeah. It was pretty constant. It was almost always on my mind. And I was actually I had a plan, and I knew that this was, I was aware enough to know that this was very dangerous for me. But what kept nagging me from really going through with it was thinking of my mother. But if she wasn't around, I probably wouldn't be around either. So that really saved me. But then when my friend said, "Hey, I might go to California, maybe you want to do that too." I was like, well, I got nothing to lose, right?
Well, that's good that you at least had some kind of support when you got over there. It wasn't like you went over there and didn't know anybody. But the first step is making that move and going.
Right. Well, my friend never came there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It was like an idea. And it was because my landlord said, "Hey, can you be out in 2 weeks?" Rather than looking for another place in Missouri. I was
Yes.
like, well, let's see if I can get over to California in 2 weeks. And I did. So I knew. So then after that, was still spiraling downward. I was very anxious, very scared. Luckily, I was able to have these live-in types of jobs. So I wasn't homeless. But I knew that's when I went for therapy. I actually went to the doctor because I was so highly anxious and I couldn't sleep and I was having these nightmares. And
Hmm.
I didn't know, I didn't even think of therapy, honestly. I went to the doctor. I was thinking I was going to get some medicine for anxiety. And I don't know if somebody suggested that or not, but I went to the doctor. And that's when the doctor set me up with a therapist.
Hmm.
So that's when I really started. And it was when she mentioned neglect and we started talking about my childhood and I was trying to remember, that's when I started writing.
Oh, got it. Was that really the first time that you ever really spoke about like past experiences with your therapist
Yes.
then? And this is
Yes.
years later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was 50 or 51 and I had never really spoke about much of my childhood or
So imagine just like a lot of the things that we keep bottled up in us, and some
yeah,
it just lasts for a lifetime. And with
right.
you, it was just so many years have gone by, and it's like you had the world on your shoulders, just all of these
Yeah.
past traumatic events. And finally, it was, I mean, I don't know how it was for you in the beginning. Was it real tough to get the words out, or did it just, it's like you couldn't stop once you started?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't believe it now, but I wasn't much for talking. I was like, I had trouble speaking about it. And so we did some EMDR therapy. And that is where you take, your eyes go from left to right. Like it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's EMDR. And
Hmm.
it sort of makes changes in your brain so that you can process without having to go through all the emotions like if you were just doing talk therapy. So I would answer some questions about my childhood and talk a little bit whatever she had asked me, but she realized that I was having trouble really just opening up about it. So we did this EMDR therapy for a while, and I had started writing in between. And that's when, after that, then I was able to start talking about it. But see, part of that is when my sister was killed in the car accident, we were in the hospital, and one of my mother's friends said to me, don't you cry. You need to be strong for your mother, so don't you cry. And so that's part of that was one of the things that kept me from ever expressing myself.
You carried that with you.
Yeah, and even today, I have trouble expressing my
Hmm.
emotions. And just not too long ago, I had a pretty good friend that had killed herself. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I feel like that event kind of opened me up a little bit with my own emotions because I still have trouble with that. And I know that that's
Yeah.
part of it was my mother's friends saying that to me, but also my whole childhood, nobody was around. So it didn't matter like if I was going to cry or if I was upset or whatever, even if I had something to celebrate, nobody was around I didn't have any emotions to express because it didn't matter because I felt like nobody cared.
Yeah.
And then that adult saying that to me. So I just had trouble with all of that. So luckily, I had a good therapist right off the bat because sometimes you don't get a good one and it takes a lot of patience, and diligence to get a good therapist. And yeah.
I wouldn't even think it to be realistic for you to say if you're going that route. And for you, maybe in an ideal world, you hit it off with the first one, but usually it might take a couple to see
Hmm.
if you and him or you and her are on that same, if you're compatible.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And I guess you found someone who was very sensitive to what you
Yeah.
needed at that time, and it worked out.
Yeah. And I can remember sitting in that waiting room to see the therapist, not just the first time, but
Oh, I would have been
oh, I was
anxious.
so anxious. It was just when I think back of how I was thinking and how I was feeling, I just was, yeah, terribly fearful and anxious. But I went. And, I think that normally, like being that it was like the last straw, my last ditch effort, being that I was already suicidal, it kind of helped me to open up even more because it was like, I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to, I want to get better. So I got to lay it all out here.
And that goes with a lot of people that are struggling with whatever it is, addictions, traumatic events, toxic relationships, or bad habits, whatever it is. But that person, I mean, you can have a lot of people from the outside telling you this, telling you that, but that individual
Right.
needs to want it for themselves. And it seems like you said, you are already at that point where this is my last call right here. So it's either make it or break it. And that kind of pushed you to, I guess, further, as opposed to if you still had a few outs, or
Yeah. Yeah.
you felt like you had a few
Exactly.
options. So, but you went through with it. So you spoke, and little by little, it was becoming easier for you to kind of express
Hmm.
yourself in the detail events.
Yeah, and once I sort of started feeling better about it and going through the EMDR and started writing about it, and I could connect those dots and I could see how things happen the way they did, it really helped me have a sense of control of my life and start to feel like I knew who I was. I started painting at that time, and things that I had never done, and just realized, what I like and who I am, and just my own identity started coming out as well. And that's when I saw that light, just that little spark of light at the end of the tunnel. And I was so ecstatic. I knew that was a turning point. It's like, okay, I know I'm going to make it now. There is a life beyond this, because I was not going to.
How long was that process?
Well, it actually wasn't a lot of time because I think I was on that edge. I was ready. I had went through probably 4 to 5 sessions before I could start to see that light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not positive how many sessions it was, but it wasn't all that long. Um, but I went through therapy, seeing the therapist, probably a year or a year and a half that I was seeing the therapist. And then things started really just,
Consistently? Like, would you go
yep,
once a week,
yep,
or
once a
how?
week. And I think at first, I think I went twice a week for maybe a month or so. But then it was down to once a week. Yeah. And I was really scared about ending it.
Yeah.
And she thought I was ready, and she said, you can come back. Let's just, end it, and we'll make an appointment for you, like for next month or something, and see if you still need it. Yeah. So I didn't feel like, oh no, I'm alone out here.
Yeah, you gotta leave the nest and
Right.
never return.
Right. Yeah, that door was still open, so I was a little bit okay with that. And I had gotten my nursing license in California at that time. So during the end of that, I had already done that so that I could sort of be a little more independent and get a better paying job because, as you know, California is not cheap to live. So
That I do.
yeah. Yeah. I do think that writing that out during the time that I was in therapy really was a big part of my healing. And as I said, I didn't start writing it to publish, but I think that was a really big part of it because I could also see,
Mhm.
it was right there in black and white. I could see how things happened and why things led up the way they did. I could connect those dots, and that was huge for me.
Yeah, I'm sure you came to terms a lot better with your emotions, the way you react, how you deal with certain
Hmm.
situations. Like you said, you learned a lot about yourself throughout that time. And I think a lot of people, we can live our life and we can go on and not really know who we're putting on, not the persona, but we're putting on what everybody else is referring to us as. Do you really know yourself? Have you took the time? And some people, it takes them being knocked down and dragged through the mud to hit rock bottom, to where they kind of want to kind of sort that thing out a bit.
Yeah, I think when you are at a point that you have to rebuild your whole life, when you're at that point, then it's like a rebirth. and you're starting from nothing, and you can build it up with whatever blocks you want to use,
Yeah,
whatever ones feel right to you and not what other people have put on you. But now these are all your own blocks that you're building from, compared to the ones from your family, the ones from this incident or that situation or your job or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. And so you were still working as a nurse? Like when did it get to the point where you said it was 2020
Yeah.
finally said, "You know what?
Yeah. So
Enough is enough. I can't do this no more."
yeah. So in 2007 is when I got my nursing license. And in 2010, I already knew that it wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. And I had started some holistic modalities classes to figure out what else I could do in this sort of healing field that wasn't medical.
Mhm.
And that's where I found hypnotherapy. And then I went and did, level 1 and level 2 and went through it, but I was with that second husband and I wasn't able to switch jobs completely. I wasn't able to switch out of nursing and do hypnotherapy. Um, so then fast forward, we went through all that where I ended up breaking down, coming to California. I was about a year in California doing these live-in caretaker type jobs and got my nursing license back. So then now we're at about 2018. And that's when I got the nursing license back. And it just was horrible, horrible, horrible. I switched jobs a couple of times, even in that short amount of time. And 2020 hit, and there were some situations that were even worse than before. And I started taking some hypnotherapy
Mhm.
courses to redo this to get out of nursing. And because my life was just starting to feel again like not suicidal at all, but I was starting to be more anxious and a little bit depressed because I was in nursing still.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna wear and tear.
yeah. So I didn't want to feel anxious. I didn't want to get depressed. I didn't want to go down that road. And like I said, I started some hypnotherapy training again and became certified here. And I was able to switch over in 2020. So yeah.
You said you had already took some you took some courses prior to that and you kind of just like retouched
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you practicing or were you having like clients or
No,
people that you seen during that time?
no. I just like when I first took the course in 2010, I just would, with some friends and some family and some people here and there,
Mhm.
just kind of off and on. And then when I was nursing in California, I had worked with some recovery and detox places, and I did a couple group sessions. I still had my certificates from hypnotherapy, and so I was working in this center and I had mentioned it to them, because there's a lot of groups that they have in those places. So I
Yeah.
mentioned to them that I would, I'd be happy to do a group once in a while, and, that I do have this hypnotherapy background. And so I did a couple in there as well under my nursing, really more so than hypnotherapy.
Oh,
But
okay.
so that was really awesome to be able to use it there.
Okay. I wonder how did you feel like your first time doing it? Were you confident or did you feel like not that you can kind of not talk yourself out of it, but just feel like I know I'm just thinking about me when I'm doing something new. Like I'm wanting it to go a certain way, or you're over anxious about the outcome, or did you just go through with it confidently and just see how it would work out and play out?
Oh, I was so excited. I wasn't really doing it much until after. I didn't really do it with people outside of nursing. Once I came to California, I wasn't really doing that other than in the recovery centers. But when I started taking the other classes, I just could not wait to get it over with. I was like, once I have this certification, then I can switch my careers. And I was so excited. I was very confident in hypnotherapy. I
Okay.
always got even back in 2010, I always got really good feedback from people, and I could see how powerful it was, and it
Hmm.
just felt really good and right within me. I was just excited to get going. And when I started that second the second time in 2020 when I started those courses again, I was like, I wish I could just fast forward a year, and just get this. It was like it's like just something I had to do to get you know, to the end point to switch over.
Start practicing it in the real
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, so I was very
I do know a couple
excited.
people that worked out for that, and this happened. This was having to do with addictions also, and it was like a one-time
Mhm.
thing. It was one visit, and that was it. It was like one and done. And I'm not too familiar with it of the process, but does it depend on the like how does it? It's not one of those things that you have to believe in it in order to be receptive, or how does that process work? If you kind of explain a little bit of that.
Yeah, you don't really have to believe in it. I've had plenty of clients that just sort of weren't sure about it, but they were just wanted to try something different because their other therapy wasn't working, or whatever they were doing, anything else hadn't worked for them before, or they have been in therapy and they like their therapist and like what's going on, but they feel like there's just some sort of subconscious block that they can't get over. So it definitely depends on the individual as far as when you're in the session itself, when you're in hypnosis, some people are much more open and are very visual, and you can get right down to the nitty gritty right away. Other people, it takes a few sessions, and it just depends on, how receptive they are and how closed off they are to that block. Some people know that there's a block and they know where it comes from, but they can't get over it. And, sometimes then you can get to it right away, and release that. But other people don't know what's going on and they don't know. They're just like, I just know I need to try something else, or they're very sort of logical minded and, they're hanging on every word and they're like, I don't want to get too deep because I don't want to miss whatever words you're saying. Whereas I've had people have tremendous outcomes even though they fall asleep in the session. So it's not a matter of hanging on every word. And those people that try to keep control of themselves
Hmm.
during the session are the ones that probably will take a little longer.
That's what I actually thought happened was that you eventually would go out during the session, and then you're kind of just dealing with the subconscious after that.
Right. I always, in every session, I always make sure that we relax the body down and we quiet the conscious mind. And then I address the subconscious and I make it very well known. I say, we are addressing your
Mm.
subconscious now. I will make some sort of statement like that. And that sort of gives the person, if they are hanging on your every word, that gives them sort of the permission to say, oh, okay, I can let go.
Have you had people coming to you for like a variety of different reasons, addictions, trauma, things like that?
Yeah, mostly. So on my website, I advertise that I mostly specialize in like women that are in middle aged or a little bit past middle aged and they're stuck in who am I now kind of a thing. It might be after divorce, it might be after, being a widow or empty nest syndrome. The kids are gone
Okay.
and they just don't know who
Hmm.
they are anymore. So kind of like self discovery or
Hmm.
life changes, big life changes, a little bit later in life, and they don't know who they are, what they want to do, or they don't have the motivation or inspiration. So it's just those kinds of things. But I have had people come to me for specific things like, like skin picking, OCD types of things,
Oh, okay.
or I have had a couple with like alcoholism or addictions, and just to help get rid of some of those cravings. So definitely a variety of things, but I do have my kind of specialty that I like to work with.
You know what? It's so refreshing to hear your story because I mean, I'm sure there's a whole lot that you didn't discuss, but everything that you talked about, and that years later, it's like you started afresh. Like you said, now you're enjoying life. And it's like it doesn't matter what age you are, how much time you feel, if you want to look at it as it being stripped from you, you losing it, you being robbed of
Right.
it, you wasting it, whatever it is, but that it doesn't matter if you choose and you make that motion to start afresh, and like you did, you took a step into the unknown. It was make it or break it. That you can create something better for yourself.
Absolutely. And that's my whole message. It's like it's never too late. You're not too old. You don't have to live the rest of your life, just being either anxious or depressed or even just not knowing yourself, just feeling
Yes.
apart from yourself. It's never too late. And everybody deserves, no matter what you have been through in life, or where you come from in life or what's happening to you now, everybody deserves to not only live their life, but to love their life. And I would
Hmm.
have never, ever, ever thought that I would love my life as much as I do right now. And I just want everybody to be able to feel that.
It's also where it's one of those things like you can never judge a book by its cover, because like just say for me, just right off of the top, me speaking with you because of your attitude, how joyful you are, cheerful, easygoing, I would never in a million years have thought that you went through all of that and some for you to be for
I
you to be
know.
the way that you are now. And of course, there was a lot of work done, and there was a lot of healing. It's like a never-ending story with that. We're going to be healing from past trauma, past suffering. For it's a lifelong cycle. But
Right. It's
you
like a
like
shower.
how there you go. Yeah,
It's like,
it's a shower. You
you
shower yourself.
right, you're clean, so it doesn't mean now I'm clean forever. It's an ongoing maintenance
Hmm.
thing. So it's the same thing with
Exactly.
with mental health and with healing. It's the same thing. It's maintenance. You're going to continue to have to go through these things. Something will come up. I say that your triggers are your, showing you where you need healing still. So if something triggers you, if all of a sudden you feel depressed or sad or anxious over something, it's like, oh, look at this. This is where I need some healing still. So, yeah, your triggers are your friend. Your pain is showing you the way of where you need to go for healing next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not to run away from it or numb it, because there's a lot of ways we can numb it or run away from it. And like especially, not to say that it does have there's a time and a place for it, but some people, they're heavily medicated and they're so numb that they're never really going to
Right.
get to the root of it, because they're not allowing themselves, like you said, for that pain to speak to them, to direct them, embrace the
Right.
shadows a little bit. And like you said, that's your friend, and this is probably going
Exactly.
to lead you in a direction where this is what needs to be dealt with, and you haven't dealt with it for years, and it's not
Right.
going to get any better until you do it. You might, for a time, there might be
Right.
some peace and easiness, but then there's a breaking point for some people, and whatever it is, that where it's finally
Yeah.
that straw, that does you in.
Right.
So
Well, somebody had said something one time about sweeping things under the rug. And if you keep doing that, eventually you're going to have a hill that you can't get over. You know, you're going to trip over that bump in the rug. So I really like that
that's
analogy,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it comes up
Hmm.
eventually. You can
That
you
is a
can
good way
numb
to
it, you
put
can
it.
hide it, but it will come out eventually. And the sooner you take care of it, the less of that bump there'll be in the rug. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I wonder for you, like during this process, your new leaf that you turned over, even what you're doing now, like while you always been in, it seems where you were when you were even as a nurse, you were still in the field where you're caring, you're providing for people. But now, like what you're doing,
Hmm.
from pet sitting to hypnotherapy, and you're helping people rediscover themselves. All this, I'm sure that also is something that boosts you up, and brings more joy and
Oh,
a
yeah.
sense of purpose to your life.
Oh, yeah. And I do. There's nothing that I do in my life that I don't love. If I am ever, so I love, love, love pet sitting. So if I ever get to the point that it seems like a burden or it seems like a chore or I just am not enjoying it, then I won't do it anymore. So I don't do anything that doesn't bring me joy. That's part of my new, you know, that's part of my new life, part of my rebirth is if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to do it. And that's not counting, the daily things of like, I use this analogy of, like I still have to clean the toilet. I still have to do the dishes.
Yeah, you
I
gotta
don't
wash the
love that,
dishes.
but
Yeah.
but as far as the other stuff, if it's not bringing me as much joy as I hope I'm bringing others as I'm doing it, then I'm not going to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, that is the way to look at it. Involve yourself with things that are going to bring you joy,
Mm-hmm.
peace, happiness. They're going to lift you up and they're going to put you in the right direction. Because everything we can surround ourselves with negativity. We could surround ourselves with grief, with pain, with sorrow, and it's no wonder we're feeling those same things or we're being that same way. But there
Right.
has to come a time when you, in a sense, turn over that new leaf or look at things in a different way. Yeah, you could. How's that old saying go? You could lead the horse to the
The
water,
horse
but
to
you
water.
can't make him drink it.
Right, right. So that's another thing too. Like, I don't, if somebody's not ready, if somebody's looking to me, they come to me for hypnotherapy because my consultations are always free.
Expect you to fix them right away.
Yeah, they want you to prove it to them. Like they're really skeptical. I'm not going to take them because I'm
Okay,
not I'm not in the business of proving it to anybody. It's when you're ready, if this is something you want to do, let's do it. But if you are trying to trip me up or trying to make me prove it to you, I'm not going to. Then you're not in it for the right reasons. So there's that.
that's true.
Yeah. But if people come to me sometimes and they're not sure and they have a free consultation, and if they don't come back to me, I try not to think of it as it wasn't because of the consultation or even I give a sample session so they can see how it feels for them, too, so they know what it's about.
Hmm.
But then they're just not ready. You have to be ready. But then you always plant a little seed. So then that's in the back of their mind that maybe that'll be something that will be helpful later on when they're ready.
Yeah, that happens. You plant the seed, and then sometimes throughout life, there's other little things that do the watering, and eventually it gets to the point where
Right.
it's where it needs to be, and they feel like now they're a bit more ripe and open to something like that.
Right. Right. I think that I'm a much better than I would have been if everything worked out in 2010, the first time I took the classes. That introduced me to it and showed, sort of planted that seed in the back of my mind. Um, but after I went through everything that I had been through and then rebuilt my life myself, now I'm helping others do the same. But at that time, I probably would not be as productive in it as I am now. So I do believe that everything we went through, and even if those seeds are planted, it still might not be the right time for that growth to fully come out.
That's true. It is timing. Timing is everything, and there's some people that they haven't.
Yes.
Yeah, they haven't got to that point yet. But like you said, and now you with all of these experiences and things that you have went through, that puts you in a whole lot better place to guide people, to direct them, and to probably to be more sensitive to people's needs and
Yes.
the individuals that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis when you're doing your session.
Yeah, and recognizing some things in people too that they might not even recognize. I've had people come to me that say, "Oh, I contacted you because I know that you have been through it." People that have read
Yes,
my book and said, "Oh, I came to you for hypnotherapy rather than another one," not necessarily because, they wouldn't be as good or anything, but because I know that you've been there. I know that you have your own story that you've been through. So I wanted to come to you. So yeah. So it definitely makes a difference.
you have the book. You have like, can you talk a little bit about the services that you offer? Because I know you have a handful of things that you're doing, and everything is for the betterment of society.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So my website is hypnobreakthrough.com, and that's HYPNO and then breakthrough.com. And I so I'm taking classes still for integrative healing arts practitioner. So I'm adding things to what I can do with my hypnotherapy clients. So I'm adding some coaching,
Oh, great.
and there's some NLP, which is the tapping, or it's EFT. I mean, emotional freedom technique, which is the tapping stuff, and we're learning some psychology in that, and some spiritual coaching as well in that,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
so we were learning about death and dying and how to deal with grief and stuff like that too. On hypnobreakthrough.com is where all that stuff can be found. I also have a link tree which has all my links to like my
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel, and where you can find the book, and I have t-shirts that I sell that is just like me time, that show
Everything.
like just time for yourself to kind of advocate for your self-care. And I have some journals
Okay.
with my artwork.
Oh, cool. Okay, go. No, go ahead. You can continue, please.
So on Amazon, if you just put my name, Pamela Topjian, that's Topjian, just put my name in Amazon, you'll find my book, and you'll find the journals with my artwork on the front covers. Those are really to help people to know how important journaling and writing is. I really stress that with all my clients too. Obviously, I think that writing really is healing. So,
Yes. I was curious about the YouTube channel because you mentioned that. What do you do on the
mhm.
YouTube channel? You talk about hypnotherapy, or it's a little bit of everything?
So I don't talk too much about hypnotherapy. So I started the YouTube channel. I kind of have a hard time just talking in front of a camera with nobody on the other side. And so I started reading my book on there just to kind of get used to it. So I have a few chapters that I've been reading out loud on the YouTube channel, but I also do some guided meditations that I recorded on the channel, just like voice only, just to listen, to help you. I have one for self love and one for connection, and, just focused on different
Okay.
things. And there's a couple longer ones that are for, like helping you to see into your future, helping you to
Hmm.
leave the past behind, gain clarity. And those are very much like my hypnotherapy sessions, but they're just not quite as focused in, or they're not individual for, each person. It's a little more generic. So those are on my YouTube channel. So it's a little bit of a few different things. As I said, I'm taking these classes, so I have a couple assignments that I have put up on there, talking about different things with the class, with the classes I'm taking. So it's just a little bit of everything. And there's only like
Yeah.
71 subscribers, and it's just really new, and it's just something I'm trying.
Hmm.
Sometimes when I have some of the longer guided meditations on there are because of sessions that I've done with clients, and they want me to do the same one over. And I say, you know what? We had such a great session with that. Let's move on to something else. And I will record this same wording and put it on YouTube, and you can listen to it anytime you want, so that we don't waste one of your paid sessions doing the same thing over.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
They always have something they can go back to. It has replay value.
Yes, yes.
So that's where you keep the tool bag nice and healthy. You have a tool bag that is healthy, and I love that it's a lot of alternative
Mhm.
resources, because there's a lot of people nowadays. More and more, maybe it was even after the COVID that was like an awakening in a sense, but a lot of people are trying something different than just the Western medicine or pharmaceutics. Like
Yeah.
it can be acupuncture. There's like what you're involved with, hypnotherapy, NLP. There's a lot of
Right.
different things that people are trying and open to, as opposed to they were to people being that way in the past. It was like it almost had a
Right.
stigma at one time, and it was like, oh, that's just that hocus pocus stuff. But I mean, it's
Mhm.
been proven to be
Right.
effective, and it's helped a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
people.
Hypnotherapy has been approved by the American Medical Association and the British Medical Association
There you have
and
it.
the American Psychology Association. I do think I agree with you that the pandemic really opened things up, because a lot of the licensed therapists and your behavioral therapists and your psychiatrists and psychologists, they were inundated with people, and you had like months,
Hmm.
if not longer, out to wait. And some of the people during the pandemic,
Yeah, they had to turn people away.
yeah. So a lot of these people thought, well, I will try whether it's hypnotherapy, whether it's Reiki, whether it's EFT, like you said, any of these alternative sort of therapies. More people were turning towards them sort of as, I'll do this until I can get in to see a therapist, or I'm going to try anything because, they were
Hmm.
having a lot of anxiety, and people who had already been through recovery through addiction and that were having a really difficult time, just having to stay home alone and not having anything to occupy their time.
Yeah. Even have you ever heard of? My wife does it. It's the Klong massage, the sound bathing.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So
She has the
awesome.
table. We have the table. She
Oh,
has a few
nice.
bowls, and she took courses on it and everything.
Oh,
And
nice.
there's occasions where she practices it, but of course, like she needs someone to practice it on. So lucky me, I get to enjoy it, and so
You're
I
right.
did it the first time ever with her, and this was probably like a few months back. But I mean, it really does, like the frequencies, you feel the vibrations. It's good for cleansing, mind cleansing, even
Mhm.
creativity. There's a lot of different ways that it can help you bring balance back into your
Yeah.
life. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of those brain waves. Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, I've had a few of those sessions. Really amazing.
You probably seen, well, you have a book that you're working on currently, correct? And this is going to be talking about some of the stuff that you've seen and dealt with and experienced throughout those years.
Yeah, yeah, I'm working on my second book. I don't have a title for it yet, so it's just going to be about my nursing career. Yeah, my time in my nursing career.
Do you have like a date or any time frame
Yeah, my goal is to have it published by next year. So December or January is my goal. I already have an editor, and
okay.
it's like done, like that first draft done. So that's done, and I'm going through it a second time, on my own, going through it on my own a second time, and then I'm going to have beta readers, and then after that, that's when I'm going to send it to the editor to go through, and then we'll see from there. So yeah, my goal is the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
There's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of juicy details in there. And I used to, once upon a time, there was a small stint where I worked in a nursing facility, not a nursing facility, a convalescent home. Like I'm not going to knock all nurses because I really do respect the ones that get in there
Mm-hmm.
with the good heart. And there are some good
Right,
ones, but
right.
there's also some being around it. I'm like, why? I would think, why are you even in this profession? I mean, they had a heavy hand and it was harsh and it
Yes,
was it was hard to see. And I couldn't even imagine me walking into visit my a family member or someone and
right.
seeing or listening to that. But the ones that are in there for the right reasons, God bless their hearts.
Right. And I wonder with some of those nurses and just medical staff, with some of those that are really seem pretty nasty, actually, I wonder if they feel stuck in the career, if it made them that way. You know what I mean? They feel stuck and they're just doing it, going through the motions, and
Mm.
are bitter and angry about it. But
Hmm.
if it made them that way, if they started out, really caring, and then it just was sort of, crushed.
Kind of taint you in a way after years of you putting
Hmm.
putting you might have started off with good intentions, but then it gets the better of you.
Yeah, and then they feel stuck because either they have families or they need that insurance, or they just don't know what else they can do, and they're just not putting any effort into what else can I do. They just feel like this is it. I'm just holding on till retirement.
You've been practicing the hypnotherapy for how long has it been?
Well, since 2020 is when when I became certified in California. So just
Okay,
3.5 years. Yeah.
and it's mainly through Zoom. Are you doing any like person to person, face to face visit?
I have not done any. Well, I was in the very beginning until, we had more lockdown stuff. But yeah, it's all through Zoom or through the phone. It's dependent on the person, if they're not comfortable getting on Zoom.
Hmm.
then we can do it by phone. And I do my consultations are free, and they have a sample session, as I said, so they can see how it feels for themselves. And a lot of times, the people that start with me with Zoom, they end up going to the phone, because then they realize, well, then I can wear whatever I want, and I don't have to think about my background. And if they want to lay in their bed, then they don't need to think about how their laptop is set up or anything to see me, or
Hmm.
they realize they don't need to see me and I don't need to see them. We just have to make sure we can hear each other well.
Yes. Wow. That was a very interesting ride you took us on, and I'm completely blown away because, like I said in the beginning, I mean, you never know somebody's background. I did know a little bit about your backstory, but to the extent that some people, including yourself, the things that they have been through, the experiences that they've had, and a lot of things are completely out of our hands. We just, these were unfortunate events and circumstances, but you managed to get
Right.
yourself out of the mess. Never mind how many years it took, but the fact that you did it, and now it sounds like these are the best years of your life. That's just so encouraging to hear, and especially me because, like I told you, I was born in '80s, so I feel like I'm a bit of a late bloomer because I wasted a lot of time doing the things I shouldn't have been doing. And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to highlight stories of people that have been through
Mm,
either mistakes, addictions, whatever it is, trauma, abuse, but that they, at one point in their life, there was a turning point, there was a switch that flipped, and they decided, I'm gonna try to do better and make better. And your story was, wow. I mean, you that's what I wanted to tell you was it the therapy? Was it the writing? It was probably the combination of all those things to where you
yeah.
still able to, it didn't knock you out and it didn't take your smile away and it didn't take your joy away. Was it the combination of all of those things that helped you to get to where you're at
I
now?
would I would say it was the combination. Yeah, I would say it was the combination. And you say took my smile away. Well, I'll tell you, I didn't have a smile before. This is this is my new smile. This is my new face. This is who I
It's the new
am
you.
that I never knew. So yeah, yeah, and so it gave me my smile. It's not that it didn't take that what I've been through hadn't taken it away. It's that the therapy and the um the EMDR therapy and the other psychotherapy and writing it all out and being able to have that, I guess it's courage, to go ahead and quit a job that I knew wasn't right for me, to
Yeah.
make these changes, all of it together has really given me my smile and given me my joy and my life. And as I said, I love everything I do. I love my life now. And I didn't even know that was possible before 50. So at 50
Wow.
was kind of my rebirth. Yeah.
That's right. You're just getting started.
Yeah. So my biggest fear is like Alzheimer's or something. It's like, don't take my mind from me now.
Think if you keep at it and you keep on that path, especially when you're involved in the kind of work that you're doing, that's good for the spirit, that's good for the soul, that's good for
Yes.
that's good for all of you, all around,
Right.
inside out.
Yes, I always say that I get as much from when I give hypnotherapy, I also get hypnotherapy. So I'm getting as much
Yeah.
healing from my clients as they are from me. Yeah.
Exactly. I feel the same way too, just listening to the stories
Yeah.
every time. And like I told you before we got online and started recording, that when I come away from it, there's something that sticks, there's something that hits home, there's something that I take away, and it always leaves me feeling better. Of course, not to hear the some of the things that people have been through, but just the fact that
That
they're
they've
in a
made it
better
out of
place
those
now,
things.
right? They're in a better place now,
Yeah, yeah.
and that kind of thing is something that really it puts the battery to my back.
It helps bring hope.
There you go.
Yeah, it brings hope and inspiration. Yeah. Knowing that others, knowing that people aren't alone in what they've gone through, and that there is, it can get better, and it does get better for so many people.
And
Yeah.
journaling is something that I really need to get more consistent about because I have a journal.
Mm-hmm.
I like to write my thoughts down and write everything down, but then I'll go for a week straight and then I just stop doing it and then I get back on it again. But I mean, and it's really
Yeah.
not even, it's like you can just put 5 minutes to the side and just go ahead and write your gratitudes for the day, whatever it is. But still,
Right.
I'm inconsistent when it comes to that.
And that's what I was. Like I said, that I was writing sort of off and on throughout my life. That's what I did too. It was just really inconsistent, just a little bit here and there once in a while, or you're consistent for a week or a couple months, or, and then you just stop and you don't go back to it. And then before you know it, a year passed. And so, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it wasn't until after that big break and I started that therapy, that's when I started writing. And that's really, I just wanted to write down my whole life to sort of connect those dots. And yeah, and if you don't know where to start, you can, like you said, just start with your gratitude journal, or start with your, if you have dreams or you have hopes, whether it's big dreams that you think, I'll never be able to do this, but I would love to do this. Write those things down. It kind of sets it in stone a little bit, puts that focus in your mind a little bit more too.
Exactly. Indeed. Short-sighted ones, and then you
Yeah.
can go for long-term goals after that. But either way, yeah, that's something to kind of get the
Mm-hmm.
ball rolling and get the creative juices flowing a bit. Use your imagination.
Yeah.
Don't just let it
Yeah.
go to waste.
Right. Right.
I really, really, not just saying that, but I really enjoyed listening to your story, your perspective, your take, and the joy that you have, and everything that you've managed to work your way out of. It was a process, but my goodness, it's inspirational. I can say that for
Thank
myself,
you.
and I was very glad that we were able to get it right this time and have this
Yeah.
conversation. Is there anything else that you would want to
I
leave
think
off with?
I just really want people to know that, whatever you're going through, or whatever you have been through, don't settle for life if you're not loving it. Just know that there's nothing special or different about me. You know, you can get through it too. Whatever you're going through, you can get through it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, it's never too late, even in your 50s.
You're giving me hope. You're giving me hope.
Yes, good. That's all I want to do, is give people hope.
Perfect. Pamela, could I ask you today? I know it's a little bit earlier in the day on your side, but before we wrap it up, what are 3 things that you are thankful for today?
3 things that I'm thankful for today is, number 1, my whole life. I'm so thankful for my whole life.
Mm.
I'm also thankful for the chance to share my story on your podcast and any others that I've been on. I'm just so thankful to be able to have that opportunity to do that. And I am thankful for living in California now, where there is no snow.
Where it never rains and
Even though
well, I wouldn't say never, but it pretty close to it.
Yeah, so those are 3 things. It's so easy for me to come up with things I'm
Hmm.
thankful for, because there's hardly anything that, I mean, I give thanks every day, because I know what it's like without, I'm never hungry anymore. I could say that.
People that have been they've been through the fire, they've been through hell and back. They can really they understand appreciation. You don't take things for granted,
Yeah, exactly.
and you've had your fair share of battles, whips, wars, but you're still kicking. They can't stop a stepper. So, Pamela, thank you again so much for this talk, for sharing your story. I really enjoyed it. I wish you all the best, and I'm going to keep my eyes peeled back for that book soon to come.
Yeah,
And I
thank
hope you
you.
have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your story with
You
us.
are so welcome, and thank you as well.
Who says it's too late to turn over a new leaf? Who told you that? Is 20 too old to get things right? 30? 40? What about 50? Pamela begs to differ, and so do I. Who do you even give the right or the authority to tell you when to tuck it in and call it quits? It ultimately comes down to what we're about, how we feel. Pamela, she still had a little spark inside of her. She was beat, she was battered, she was bruised and even broken, but still with enough spark in her to give it one more shot. And guess what? It worked out for her. She took the leap of faith. She stepped out of her comfort zone and into the unknown. Whether it was an act of desperation, an attitude that I'm going to either sink or swim, it's make it or break it. One last call, that's all I have. But she went through with it. There's an old book and it says that with the faith the size of a tiny mustard seed, one can move mountains. All you have to do is find it within yourself to believe in yourself, and even if there's doubt, still take action, move forward. If you're tired of your situation, if you're sick of your circumstances, if you're in a rut and looking for a way out, Pamela's a testament that it's never too late. No matter what you've been through, you can create a better tomorrow. You can change the direction of your life. You can start fresh and anew and begin to rebuild and heal. Like I had asked Pamela, after everything that you've been through, all the pain, all the suffering, the abuse, how is it that that didn't knock the smile off your face? How is it that that didn't strip the joy from you? It wasn't that it didn't, she said, but it's that now, after putting in that inner work, finding out who she really was, the purpose and the meaning she now has in life, that gave her a new smile, that gave her a new perspective and appreciation, that gave her a new life. That's a wonderful thing. Maybe there's somebody listening who feels like it's too late. They've tried it, it doesn't work. They've made the effort, nothing seems to give. There is hope. Let Pamela's story be a reminder of that. Every one of our paths are going to be different. Our experiences, they're unique to each one of us. And ultimately, it comes down to each one of us on an individual basis to do the work and figure out what makes us happy, what brings meaning, joy, and purpose to our life. If that's even something that we're interested in entertaining, because it's not for everybody. But Pamela, years later, working it out, sorting it out, rebuilding, she found her joy, she found her purpose, she found where the meaning in life is for her. And she's happy. Like she said, now she's living her best life. And I could respect the fact that she said she's not going to give her time or involve herself with anything that isn't going to make her happy, with anything that isn't going to bring her joy or be meaningful to her. You know, she's not just going to do it for the sake of doing it. Her book, I Didn't Come This Far to Only Come This Far, should give you an idea of her attitude, her spirit, and the approach she has to life these days. You can find it wherever books are sold. And also, if you'd like to get in contact with Pamela or find out more of what she does, I'll leave all of her information in the description box so you can check out her website, see of the guided meditations that she offers, her hypnotherapy sessions, or even to just shoot her a line and say, hey, I was listening to your story and I appreciated it. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear from you. So Pamela, thank you once again for your time, your words, and some of your life experiences that you shared with us today. And of course, thank you to all the listeners far and wide. There wouldn't be no show without you, along with all of the guests from past up until now that have shared their stories. I appreciate you all and thank you for being a part of this experience. You can check us out at giantsamongustus.com, where you can share your thoughts on any of the shows. You can even leave a voicemail if you like, and I can share that voicemail on one of the upcoming shows. And to all of you, if you dig the stories, if they have touched you, spoke to you, resonated with you in any way, share them with a friend. Spread the word. Let's keep this thing grooving. Before we check out, If you like to be a part of the show and share your story, or maybe even a story of someone in your life that has impacted you in a positive way, you can always reach out to me via email. I'd be happy to connect. Until next time, and very soon, peace.
I'm looking for a sign to know I'm on the right road. Ain't seen no sign since Jericho.